Thank you. Please take your seats. Good morning, everyone. It is with great pleasure that I welcome you to the first part of Royal College Day 2022, our annual general meeting and council meeting. I am particularly glad that I am looking out at a sea of actual faces for this year's Royal College Day. With the last two events having taken place mostly virtually, it is certainly a relief that we can finally have this one in person and take the opportunity to meaningfully reinforce those connections we have made. We do still have some people who will be watching this remotely, and I would also like to extend a very warm welcome to them as well. This event encompasses the official business of our annual general meeting and council meeting. And among other things, we will present our annual report and financial statements for 2021, welcome new members of both RCVS Council and Veterinary Nurses Council, and bid farewell and thank you to those whose service on our councils draws to a close. It is, of course, also the last day of my presidential year, something that has managed to feel both all too short and being quite long at the same time. So while I am sad that this time has come to an end, although maybe with a bit of negotiation I could hang on for another 3 months, I am so pleased to hand over the chain of office to my close colleague, Melissa Donald, later in the proceedings. The second half of Royal College Day will begin after lunch, when I shall be delighted to present the college's honours and awards to a host of very worthy recipients. But for now, I will ask the Registrar, Eleanor Ferguson, to start the 179th Annual General Meeting of the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons.
Thank you, President, and good morning, everyone. I can confirm that the notice of the Annual General Meeting appeared in the Vet Record on 21st May 2022.
As we begin our Annual General Meeting, I would like to read out the loyal message from our patron, Her Majesty the Queen, to whom we also wrote earlier in the year to congratulate her on the occasion of her Platinum Jubilee. Please convey my warm thanks to the President and Council of the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons for their loyal greetings sent on the occasion of Royal College Day and their annual general meeting, which is being held today in London. As your patron, I must appreciate your kind words and, in return, send my best wishes to all those who are present for a most enjoyable event. Elizabeth R.
The minutes of the Annual General Meeting held on 9th July last year have been made available online, and printed copies are also available today. May I ask for an indication that the minutes of the last meeting are approved? Oh, I see some nods there. Thank you. These minutes are approved, so we'll proceed with the agenda for today's meeting.
We now come to the consideration of the annual report and financial statements for the year ending 31st December 2021. It is available online, and there are hard copies available to you today. They were outside on the table, which I haven't got a copy. So I formally present the RCVS Annual Report and Financial Statements. At this point, we would ordinarily consider questions on the Annual Report and Financial Statements 2021 received from veterinary surgeons and veterinary nurses by our published deadline of 5 p.m. on Wednesday, the 6th of July. We've received no written questions by that deadline, so if no one has any questions now, we will proceed to the next item. Thank you.
Thank you, President. We now turn to the results of the 2022 RCVS Council election. This year, the turnout for RCVS Council was 6,583 veterinary surgeons, or 18.7% of those eligible to vote. And I hereby declare the following three people to be elected members of RCVS Council. Dr. Susan Patterson, 2,358 votes. Olivia Cook, 1,994 votes. And Dr. Abby Kalo, 1,820 votes.
Susan is a current member of Council and so has been re-elected for a 4-year term. Olivia and Abby are new members and so are formally welcomed to Council for their 4-year terms today. My congratulations to you all.
Those not elected this time were Dr. Mark Bowen, Professor David Barrett, Dr. Gonzalez Sanchez Perez, Dr. Hugh Stacey, Thomas Glidden, Dr. Samantha Webster, Edward Davies, Dr. Ian McKelvey, Dr. Jason Aldis, and Radu Sirbu.
We will be saying our formal goodbye to those members who are retiring from Council today in due course. Meanwhile, I would like to take the opportunity to formally welcome all our new members to RCVS Council. These include not only Olivia and Abby, but also Will Wilkinson, who joined Council in June for the remainder of an existing 4-year term, namely until July 2025, after which time he will be eligible to stand for re-election. So Olivia, Abby and Will, please join me on stage individually so that I can welcome you to Council. Olivia?
With regard to our appointed lay members, I can confirm that Professor Derek Bray, Claire McLaughlin and Tim Walker have each been reappointed for a further 4-year term to July 2026. Congratulations and our ongoing thanks to you all for your hard work and commitment to the RCVS.
Turning to our retiring Council members, we should now like to say a few words about each before inviting those present to the stage so we can formally thank them for their contributions. First is our Senior Vice President, Mandisa Green, who leaves both the officer team and RCVS Council today. Mandisa was first elected to RCVS Council in 2014 and has served a total of 8 years on Council. The full list of Mandisa's appointments can be found in the programme. But I would like to pick out a few highlights from her years on Council, returning to her time on the officer team a little later today. As Chair of Practice Standards Group since 2018, Mandisa has brought that vital practitioner eye view to the group, which is responsible for governing the scheme. As Chair of the group, she was involved in our 2019 digital campaign, Veterinary Care from Your Kind Vets, aimed at improving awareness of the Practice Standards scheme amongst animal owners. Her time as Practice Standards Group Chair has also seen the pathway for vet nurses to become Practice Standards Assessors being opened, and indeed the recruitment of the first 2 veterinary nurses to this role. Furthermore, as Chair of the group, she has also overseen the bolstering of standards we expect practices to meet. For example, around mental health and well-being policies for veterinary staff, learning culture and quality improvement, and most recently, sustainability and inclusivity. On that latter point, diversity and inclusion has been a key focus of Mandisa's time on Council. As the College's first Black Council member and first Black President, she has been acutely aware of her status as a pioneer and a role model, and has put this to good use, while also not shying away from difficult conversations about the lack of diversity in the professions. Amongst her achievements has been at the forefront of 2 RCVS Black History Month campaigns, which included being interviewed by weather presenter Alex Beresford as part of an ITV documentary on Black British community, as well as interviewing young Black British vets and veterinary nurses last year to help highlight veterinary careers. She has also done lots of school outreach work and talks with children from all backgrounds across the UK, talking about her own slightly complicated journey into the veterinary profession and giving an insight into what it means to be a vet, as well as invaluable careers advice. Mandisa, on behalf of the whole RCVS Council and staff team, thank you for everything you have done to help support the college's work during your 8 years as an elected council member. Please join me on stage to accept a small token of our appreciation.
Next today, we say farewell and thank you to Col Neil Smith.
Again, the full list of Neil's many appointments can be found in the programme, but I wanted to highlight a few key aspects of his time at the college. Neil was first elected to council in 2004, and after standing down in 2008, rejoined council in 2010, serving on it for a total of 16 years. Neil served as RCVS President in 2013 to 14, in what might seem like a very different time, being as it was both pre-COVID and pre-Brexit. Neil's presidential year saw the launch of the prestigious Queen's Medal, the highest honour that can be bestowed upon an individual veterinary surgeon from the RCVS, and we will be presenting the 9th annual RCVS Queen's Medal later this afternoon. Neil's presidential year also saw significant strides in the development of our new Royal Charter, which would eventually come into force in early 2015. Key aspects of that charter took shape during Neil's presidential year, along with proposals for veterinary nurses to become associates of the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons, for the list of veterinary nurses to merge with the register, and also the Charter more clearly setting out the role and remit of the RCVS, for example, in advancing standards through the promotion of continuing professional development and the practice standards scheme. From staff who were working at the college during his presidential year, I have heard that Neil's visits to Belgravia House, our headquarters at the time, were highly anticipated, not only to see their president, of course, but also his beautiful and much-missed dog, Fire, who was trained to detect improvised explosive devices and had been severely injured in an explosion in 2011 before being adopted by Neil. Fire went on to become the mascot for the Invictus Games for wounded servicemen and women in 2014 and was a much-loved companion for Neil and remembered fondly by many at the college. Neil has also been a consistent champion and awareness raiser for issues around veterinary mental health and was the inaugural chair of the RCVS Mind Matters initiative when it was launched at the end of 2014. Neil has continued to play a very active role on council, including through his various committee memberships. For example, he has helped the Riding Establishment Subcommittee navigate major changes to the regulations on how they are licensed, and has continued to advocate for issues around mental health and well-being and championing the veterinary nursing profession. Neil, on behalf of RCVS and VN councils and staff, past and present, thank you sincerely for all your hard work and commitment to the RCVS over many years of service. And I would like to invite you onto the stage to accept a small gift.
Turning now to the Veterinary Nurses Council election results, I'm pleased to be joined by VN Council Chair Matthew Rendell.
Thank you, Eleanor, and good morning, everyone.
This year, VN Council had 8 candidates standing for 2 elected places. We had a turnout of just over 8%, with 1,740 veterinary nurses casting their vote. So I hereby declare the following to be elected to VN Council for 3-year terms. Holly Witchell, RVN, 533 votes. Jessica Louise Beckett, RVN, 451 votes. Those not elected to VN Council at this time were Jane Davidson, Kirsten Cavell, Samantha Jane Anderson, Sophie Louise Connolly, Terry Ann Baldwin, and Sarah Amanda Scholes.
In a moment, we will pay tribute to our retiring members this year. But first, I should like to invite Holly and Jessica, one at a time, to the stage to be formally welcomed to VN Council. So Holly, if you'd like to join me on stage. And Jessica. Sorry, Holly.
Turning now to this year's retirements from VN Council, our first retiree today is Jane Davidson.
Although Jane, unfortunately, is unable to join us today, I should like to say a few words about her and her time on VN Council since she was elected in 2019. As a practicing veterinary nurse and historian of the veterinary professions, Jane really came into her own last year when we celebrated the 60th anniversary of the veterinary nursing profession. She presented a webinar on the profession's recent history and helped to write the commemorative e-book that we published to mark and celebrate both the long history of the profession as well as its recent developments and achievements. Jane has also contributed in the wider college work, for example, through taking part as a panel member of the Mind Matters webinar on building online veterinary communities to counter isolation. That we published, Jane has also, presented a session on juggling the demands of recent student veterinary nurses wellbeing discussion forums. On behalf of VN Council, I should like to place on record my thanks to Jane for her contributions over the last 3 years.
Also retiring from VN Council today after 11 years service is Liz Cox.
Liz has served as an elected member of VN Council since 2011 and served as chair from 2015 to 2018. She was also sat on the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons Council as an appointed veterinary nursing representative from VN Council. Liz has been a constant and vocal advocate for our profession in her time on VN Council, not least when she was chair, with her major concerns being raising awareness of what veterinary nurses do amongst the animal owning profession, improving understanding amongst the professions of Schedule 3 and delegation, and encouraging veterinary nurses to think about how they want to map out the future for their profession. Starting with awareness raising, Liz has been at the forefront of encouraging veterinary nurses to speak more about what they do, highlighting their values and skills and their experiences wherever they can. She led the campaign and petition for the veterinary nurses to get the protection of the title so that those could appropriate training and registration would legally be able to call themselves, with those without calling themselves veterinary nurses. This remains a central tenet of the Legislative Working Party recommendations and at the time sparked a wider conversation about the value of veterinary nursing. As a member of the Legislative Reform Working Party herself, Liz contributed in setting how the future veterinary legislation might clarify and enhance the role of veterinary nurses. Part of this work was improving the understanding of the current rules around delegation to veterinary nurses after surveys revealed that there was a lack of understanding around how Schedule 3 applied in practice. Liz undertook talks and webinars on the art and practice of delegation and as well as developing and promoting the superb checklist poster as a practical way to help those in practice. Finally, through the VM Futures project, Liz has played a key role in encouraging VNs to take proactive interest in the future of the profession. She was active in the VN Futures research sessions and helped with the launch of the project's first action plan in 2016. Since then, she has supported and developed enhancing the post-registration VN qualification and championed the wider career progression for vet nurses. Personally, Liz is one of the reasons I'm here, because I bumped into her and she told me to to do it, so I have to thank her for that, I think. Grateful thanks for the long list of service to the VN Council, and if you'd like to join me on the stage, we have a token of our appreciation.
Thank you, Matthew. That concludes the business of the Annual General Meeting. The next Annual General Meeting will be held on Friday, 7th July 2023, here at 1 Great George Street. So I would now like to announce a short meeting of RCVS Council to elect the new President, Vice Presidents and Treasurer.
Thank you. The first item on the agenda, apologies for absence, which I received from Professor Derek Bray, Dr. Danny Chambers and Professor Tim Parkin. Declarations of interest, item 2. Does anyone have any declarations of interest that are relevant to today's agenda? Thank you. We now move to matters for decision by Council.
I would ask Council to approve the appointment of the Presidential Team and Treasurer for 2022-23. President, Dr. Melissa Donald. Senior Vice President, Dr. Kate Richards. Junior Vice President, Dr. Susan Patterson. Treasurer, Dr. Neil Connell. So can I please ask Council to confirm the new Presidential Team? Thank you, and congratulations to our new presidential team, and we shall hear more from both Kate and Melissa a little later on this morning. So the next public meeting of Council will take place on Thursday, 8th September 2022 at 10 a.m. And that brings to close this short meeting of Council. And I would now like to invite our CEO, Lizzie Lockett, to deliver her address. Thank you.
Thanks, Eleanor. I'm always glad when I can get up here without tripping over my gown and forgetting my specs, so I'm doing well to start with. Good morning, everybody. It is such a privilege to welcome you to an in-person RCVS Day and to a refurbished 1 Great George Street, which is looking gorgeous, as I'm sure you agree, as are all of you, of course. So what have we been up to in the last 12 months? Well, the too long did not read version is this. We bought a building, we moved out of a building, we stayed solvent, we supported our staff and kept the show on the road despite the ongoing effects of the pandemic, and we did a bit of dancing. So if that's all the detail that you need, then feel free to go and grab a coffee at this point. But for those of you who want a little bit more, here goes. Let's start with the building. Towards the end of 2021, we bought our fantastic new building, 1 Hardwick Street, after a rather long and protracted purchase process. It's a 6th-floor Victorian warehouse in Clerkenwell, a 15-minute walk from either King's Cross or Farringdon, which is on the new Elizabeth line. And it will provide a fabulous space and location from which the college can move into its next chapter. We then continued to lease back Belgravia House as per our original plan. But given lockdown working patterns, it was starting not to make financial sense. So we moved out in March 2022 into our new temporary accommodation on Chancery Lane, moving from being amongst the politicians to being amongst the lawyers. Whether or not that was a good move or not, I guess that's up to personal preference, right? So although we were very fond of good old BH, it did surprise many to find out that this had not been our forever home. In fact, we'd only moved into the building in 1995. But nonetheless, we had become attached to it, and the thought of moving out was a little daunting, not least because it mainly ended up happening during lockdown. It took a huge effort to move all of our stuff, and things have ended up in many separate locations, including salt mines, yes, they do really exist, for 2,400 items from our historic collection to ensure optimal conditions, a vault for our precious regalia, which the President is wearing beautifully today, archive space in Westminster for 400 boxes of books, and also several storage locations. We also donated furniture and office supplies to a local school and recycled or donated a lot of IT equipment. And it was actually quite sobering to see how much stuff one accumulates in an office. We all had our own individual staplers and hole punches and sellotape dispensers, and when you multiply that by 120, that's a lot of stuff. And don't even get me started on my shoe collection. So all in all, moving out was a huge task, and I would like to take this opportunity publicly to thank all of the RCVS team involved with that process, in particular our operations team, our facilities, and the RCVS Knowledge Library team. If you could just join me in giving them a round of applause. I think unless you were there and lived through it, you don't imagine how hard work that was. So our new building currently has tenants and also requires some refurbishment work. Buying a building with tenants was financially a very sound move, and actually our move into temporary shared accommodation has been a great opportunity to reassess what we need from our workspace. It's given us a blank sheet to play with, so that rather than trying to recreate Belgravia House in Hardwick Street, which I think would have been a retrograde step, as our working patterns have changed so much since the pandemic, we've got the opportunity to really think about what we need. And Churchill said, "We shape our buildings, thereafter they shape us." And I think it's true that a building can help to define and maintain the culture of an organisation. So it's really important that our new space is not only designed to support the way we work now in this new hybrid world, but also how we want to be in the future as a college. And we're starting the refurbishment planning process now, and we aim to move in the second half of 2023. And sustainability will be key in our planning. And on that note, I was really proud that our team achieved Investors in the Environment Bronze Award this year, despite moving building. And in order to achieve a floor plate that accommodates our meeting room requirements, Hardwick Street is bigger than we need for office space right now, so we do have the option to continue to rent it, which may make financial sense. But I'm also keen that we dedicate enough space to have a really appealing members area and a better display of our unique historic collection. And I think that many people felt Belgravia House was really just the home of disciplinary hearings, but the college is about so much more, and you'll get a flavour of that, hopefully, when we do our awards this afternoon. And I would really like the new building to reflect that. In fact, it's my ambition to invite every member of the college to visit the building at least once during their career for a purpose other than a disciplinary hearing. So also this year, a huge amount of time has been taken up with our ongoing review of undercare and out of hours, and a massive thank you to our registrar, our standards committee, and the standards supporting staff team in particular. I know that our standards committee chair is fond of running, and this has certainly been a marathon and not a sprint. And I was really pleased that at its meeting on Wednesday, RCVS Council agreed to a consultation package on new draft guidance. And I think the pandemic has taught us how flexible and adaptive the veterinary team can be. And it's important that in relative peacetime, we recognise that the profession does not work in a vacuum and has to adapt to the world around it in order to stay relevant and to best serve the needs of animal health and welfare and public health. And we really look forward to hearing the thoughts of the professions and the public on these proposed changes. Another piece of work that's been ongoing this year has been our project to support conversation and action on veterinary workforce. We really recognise the pressure that all branches of the veterinary profession have been under, not least the practising arm, due to a multitude of factors, including the pandemic, Brexit, increasing demand for veterinary services, and an increase in part-time working and shortening career spans within the profession for both vets and nurses. We don't hold all of the solutions, and it's something for all stakeholders within the professions to address. So we were delighted to host our Workforce Summit in November, where we brought together many individuals and, fueled with data from our registers and the views of vets and nurses at the coalface, we were able to support and facilitate conversations about possible solutions. This work, headed by our ViVet innovation team, looked not only at recruitment and retention, the traditional pillars of workforce conversations, but also return, trying to see how we could, by supporting the development of a more inclusive workforce, encourage people back into the profession they joined with such joy on their graduation. Our workforce action plan will be published shortly, and while there will be no magic bullets, we will be summarising our current actions and those proposed, together with what we know other organisations are working on. And a key part of retention is to build the right culture in which veterinary professionals can thrive, and our work on leadership, diversity and inclusion and mental health supports this. We were delighted to launch our leadership library this year, as well as publishing a report on how better to support Black, Asian and minority ethnic veterinary students, and also guidance on the wearing of religious clothing in clinical settings. And those last two documents were published in a joint activity with the Veterinary Schools Council, so huge thanks to the support there. There is simply no excuse not to try to make the professions as welcoming as possible for the widest range of individuals. And the establishment of our new working group on reasonable adjustments and focused licensure is part of this drive. We need to open the doors, include all, and make all welcome, so that everyone feels they can belong. And along with the opening of those doors will come huge breaths of fresh air, new perspectives, and valuable skills and knowledge. We will also be supporting our vets and nurses to meet our standards via our new online RCVS Academy, which was launched last month. A really great initiative that brings together accessible learning in one place. There are two types of regulator. Those who say, we set the standards, it's up to you to meet them, crack on. And those who recognise that it's in the best interests, in our case, of veterinary professionals, animal health and welfare, and the public, if regulated professionals are supported in meeting those standards that are set for them by their peers. The Academy helps us meet our objective of being a compassionate regulator that wants our members to succeed, so I would encourage you to go and look at it. And staying on the theme of support, thanks to the hard work of our education, digital and communications teams, we were able to launch the Vet GDP for new graduates in the summer. We currently have over 2,000 Vet GDP advisors who have completed the training and a further 1,400 who are in the process of completion. A handful of vets have already completed the Vet GDP, and we're collecting data from both new graduates and employers about the programme, which we hope we will publish in due course. So far, it's been very well received, and we know that the support that vets receive in their first year or so in practice, or in any workplace actually, has a real impact on them that can be career-long. I'm sure you all remember how you were treated in your first roles, and that does have a patterning effect on how we behave through the rest of our lives, really. So I'm delighted that college is leading the way on this, and we've also received interest in the programme from many other countries now too. And the college does continue to make its mark globally in terms of education, such as our new accreditation standards for vets and nurses, our professional culture work, practice standards and other initiatives. And when it came to Europe, we also made our mark with our dancing skills this year. So we were really pleased to have been able to host the Federation of Veterinarians of Europe General Assembly in London just last month, jointly with the British Veterinary Association. Originally planned for 2020, this had been a long time in the making, and huge thanks to our events and public affairs teams for pulling it off. It was not only the first in-person General Assembly since COVID, but the first one since Brexit. So it was really important to remind our European colleagues that while we may be out of the EU, we continue to value our relationships with them and the benefits of collaboration, shared knowledge and support on a range of really important professional and animal health and welfare topics. Nancy de Bryn, the wonderful executive director of FVE, said to the RCVS and BVA teams afterwards, "Together, you organised an event that everyone will remember and talk about for a long time. We will say, remember when we were in London?" Which was really lovely to hear. But what are the dancing, I hear you say? Well, we decided that to showcase the 4 countries of the UK, we would have an English-themed event at the House of Lords, although I'm not quite sure what our French colleagues made of the English wine. But thank you to Lord Trees for supporting and hosting that event. We then had Welsh and Northern Irish lunches at the meetings and a Scottish-themed dance on the Friday, complete with Ceilidh Band. We may have exited the EU, but the colleagues who dozy-do together stay together, right? So we have covered a lot of ground this year, and this 10-minute overview is never going to do it justice, so apologies to the teams for anything that I've missed. And do please take time to read our annual report. There's copies outside, which covers much more of our activities. As ever, a huge thank you to the Council and our officer team for all of their support this year, and especially Kate Richards, who has been such a fair, inclusive, knowledgeable and skillful president, in particular spending a huge amount of time supporting our push for new legislation. And I'm looking forward to welcoming our new President, Melissa Donald, later, and I hope you're noting that our handover is a little more planned and orderly, perhaps, than the one that's happening across the road at the moment. I would just like to close by saying a few words about the team at the college. We had our first in-person all-staff meeting in 3 years at London Zoo last week, and it was amazing to see everyone, pretty much nearly everyone, together in one place again, and it was a fantastic opportunity to reflect on how diverse our staff body has become. We've recruited a huge number of new people over the last year or so. And yet, despite the diversity, the shared values of compassion, straight talking, diversity and inclusion and forward thinking really shone through in some excellent conversations that we had, the fundraising efforts to support war-torn Ukraine, and the willingness to push ourselves and to support each other. I've been so proud that the staff team that supports the veterinary professions that in most cases are not their own, do so with huge passion, energy and commitment. I know that not all the members of the professions get to see this at first hand, but perhaps once we can welcome you to Hardwick Street, you will. So thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of today. With lunch coming very soon and our inspiring awards straight after that, it will get more fun from here on in, I promise, but I can't promise there will be dancing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lizzie. And with that, we will now take a short break for lunch in the Great Hall next door. Please make sure to be seated again for 1 p.m. for our honours and awards ceremony, where we will be joined by awards recipients and their guests. Thank you.